video, the plaintiff, Ms. Bartnoff, recounts how her journey with the defendant's matchmaking service, Ultimate Encounters, began. She explains to Judge Judy that she discovered the service through an advertisement in a magazine called The Journal, which she notes has a wide circulation throughout Los Angeles. The advertisement was enticing, promising a valuable service at no cost to women. Following her discovery of the advertisement, Ms. Bartnoff made a phone call to Ultimate Encounters, an act that would lead her deeper into the defendant's web. The narrator in the video would describe this scene with a focus on the defendant, Linda's, persuasive tactics. Over the phone, Linda delivered a compelling sales pitch, painting a picture of a vast and exclusive network of eligible men. After the enticing phone call, the narrative shifts to Ms. Bartnoff's visit to Linda's home office in Redondo Beach. The narrator would describe this scene with a subtle emphasis on the incongruity of a professional matchmaking service operating out of a living room. Ms. Bartnoff explains to Judge Judy that Linda works directly from her home, a detail that might raise an eyebrow for the discerning viewer. Despite the unconventional setting, Linda continued her persuasive pitch, elaborating on her service and, more importantly, on her extensive experience. She claimed to possess years of expertise in both psychology and sociology, implying a deep understanding of human relationships and compatibility. The narrator would highlight Linda's confident demeanor and her ability to weave a compelling story, suggesting that she had successfully orchestrated numerous successful matches, boasting a success rate of around 90%. The narrator would emphasize how Linda leveraged these claims to build credibility and trust with Ms. Bartnoff, painting a picture of a highly effective and reputable matchmaker. The judge, observing this testimony, would likely maintain her characteristic skepticism, perhaps interjecting with a pointed question or a knowing glance. The narrator would also draw attention to the psychological manipulation at play, where Linda used her supposed academic background to legitimize her operation, despite the informal setting. This phase of the encounter was crucial for Linda, as it allowed her to solidify her narrative and prepare Ms. Bartnoff for the next step in her scheme. The contrast between the grand promises and the humble setting would be a recurring theme, subtly underscored by the narrator to highlight the deceptive nature of the defendant's business. The narrator would also hint at the underlying motive behind Linda's elaborate claims: to secure the mandatory photography fee, which was the true financial cornerstone of her operation. This detailed description of the home office visit serves to further expose the defendant's methods and the plaintiff's gradual entanglement in the deceptive scheme. As the conversation at Linda's home office progressed, the true nature of the free service began to unravel. The narrator would describe this pivotal moment with a sense of revelation, as Ms. Bartnoff explains to Judge Judy the unexpected financial requirement. While the matchmaking service itself was indeed advertised as free for women, a crucial caveat was introduced: a mandatory fee of $165 for professional photographs. This wasn't merely an option, it was an minus negotiable condition. MS. Bartnoff was explicitly told the Chad House, Linda's designate photographer studio conveniently located in Hollywood, and was strictly prohibited from bringing in her own photographs using an alternative photographer. The narrator would emphasize that the sudden shift in the defendant's demeanor from a charming saleswoman to from enforcer off the shitting cost. Judge Judy, with her sharp legal mind, would undoubtedly pick up in this discrepancy her gesintensifyingas MS. Bartnoff recounts this detail. The narrator would highlight their oniofa, free, service that comes with a compulsory, albeit seemingly small upfront payment. This $165 for professional photographs. This wasn't merely an option, it was a non-negotiable condition. Ms. Bartnoff was explicitly told that she had to use Linda's designated photography studio, conveniently located in Hollywood, and was strictly prohibited from bringing in her own photographs or using an alternative photographer. The narrator would emphasize the sudden shift in the defendant's demeanor, from a charming saleswoman to a firm enforcer of this hidden cost. Judge Judy, with her sharp legal mind, would undoubtedly pick up on this discrepancy, her gaze intensifying as Ms. Bartnoff recounts this detail. The narrator would highlight the irony of a free service that comes with a compulsory, albeit seemingly small, upfront payment. This $165 for professional photographs. This wasn't Morellian option, it was an minus negotiable condition. MS. Bartnoff was explicitly told the House, Linda's designate photographer studio conveniently located in Hollywood and was strictly prohibited from bringing in her own photographs or using an alternative photographer. The narrator would emphasize that the sudden shift in the defendant's demeanor from a charming saleswoman to from enforcer off the shitting cost. Judge Judy, with her sharp legal mind, would undoubtedly pick up in this discrepancy her Geseintensifiengas MS. Bartnoff recounts this detail. The narrator would highlight the Raniofa, free service that comes with a compulsory, albeit seemingly small upfront payment. This $165 fee, while presented as a minor administrative cost, was in fact a significant revenue stream for Linda, as the judge would later expose. The narrator would also point out the psychological tactic at play. By presenting the course service as free, Linda made the photography fee seem like a reasonable, almost negligible, expense in comparison to the perceived value of meeting a high-earning partner. This point in the narrative is crucial, as it marks the transition from a seemingly legitimate offer to a clear indication of a deceptive business practice. The narrator would use this moment to build tension, foreshadowing the judge's eventual condemnation of Linda's scheme. The strict control over the photography process, disallowing personal photos, further underscores the defendant's intent to profit from this seemingly innocuous requirement, making it a central pillar of her alleged scam. In an attempt to justify the seemingly contradictory fee for photographs within a supposedly free service for women, the defendant, Linda, presented her business model to Ms. Bartnoff. The narrator would describe Linda's explanation as a carefully constructed facade, designed to maintain the illusion of a legitimate and ethical operation. Linda asserted that the financial burden of the matchmaking service fell entirely upon the men. She explained that the male clients paid a substantial membership fee, which varied significantly based on the duration of their commitment and the number of guaranteed introductions they desired. These fees, she claimed, ranged anywhere from a considerable 2,000 tone of n more significant 2,000 to an even more significant 2,000 tone of n more significant 5,000. This stark contrast in pricing, with women paying nothing for the core service, was presented as the reason why the photography fee was a necessary, yet minor, after Ms. Bartnoff had paid the mandatory $165 for her photographs and completed the initial steps, a period of disheartening silence ensued. The narrator would describe this phase of the story with a growing sense of frustration and disappointment, mirroring Ms. Bartnoff's experience. Despite the defendant's grand promises of numerous introductions and a vast catalog of eligible men, Ms. Bartnoff received absolutely no communication from ultimate encounters. No calls, no emails, no potential matches, nothing. She recounts to Judge Judy how she diligently attempted to contact Linda month after month, hopping for an update, a sign of progress, or at least an explanation. Each attempt, however, was met with the same result: Linda's answering machine. The narrator would emphasize the repetitive and increasingly desperate nature of Ms. Bartnoff's efforts, highlighting the emotional toll of being ignored and feeling misled. The judge, observing Ms. Bartnoff's genuine distress, would likely display a look of growing concern, recognizing the pattern of a service that failed to deliver on its promises. The narrator would also point out the stark contrast between the initial enthusiastic pitch and the subsequent complete lack of engagement from the defendant. This period of silence was not merely an inconvenience. It was a clear indication that the service, despite the upfront payment, was not functioning as advertised. Ms. Bartnoff's persistent calls, always reaching an answering machine, underscore the defendant's deliberate avoidance of her clients once the initial fee had been secured. The narrator would build a sense of anticipation for the moment, Ms. Bartnoff finally manages to get Linda on the phone, knowing that this long-awaited conversation would be anything but pleasant. This point in the narrative effectively conveys the plaintiff's growing disillusionment and the defendant's apparent negligence, setting the stage for the dramatic confrontation that is soon to follow in the courtroom. After months of unanswered calls and growing frustration, Ms. Bartnoff finally managed to get Linda, the matchmaker, on the phone. The narrator would describe this long-awaited conversation with a sense of dramatic tension as the plaintiff recounts the shocking exchange to Judge Judy. Ms. Bartnoff, understandably exasperated, pressed Linda for an explanation, reminding her of the initial promises of numerous introductions. She expressed her disappointment, stating, "You gave me the impression that you were gonna set me up with all these guys you know." However, instead of an apology or an explanation, Linda's response was nothing short of verbally abusive and dismissive. The narrator would emphasize the harshness of Linda's words, painting a picture of a sudden and aggressive shift in her demeanor. Linda, in a fit of rage, retorted with a vulgar insult, then proceeded to clarify in no uncertain terms the true nature of her business. She bluntly told Ms. Bartnoff, "Listen, you censor. Had you read your contract, the service fee was free. I work for the men who pay me a service fee of $5,000. The narrator would highlight the cold, calculating tone in Linda's voice as she continued. "And had you paid me $5,000. The narrator would highlight the cold, calculating tone in Linda's voice as she continued. "And had you paid me $5,000. The narrator would highlight the cold, calculating tone in Linda's voice as she continued. "And had you paid me $5,000, I would get off my butt tomorrow and start look for someone for you." This statement was a stark and brutal revelation, exposing the true hierarchy of her clientele and the conditional nature of her services. The conversation culminated with Linda telling Ms. Bartnoff to "go F yourself, and you need to get yourself an F-censored life," before abruptly hanging up. The narrator would describe Ms. Bartnoff's stunned reaction, the sound of the phone thumping as it was dropped, and her disbelief at the matchmaker's callousness. Judge Judy, listening to this testimony, would likely show a mixture of outrage and confirmation, as Linda's true character and the deceptive practices of her business were laid bare. This pivotal moment in the narrative reveals the defendant's true colors, demonstrating her willingness to exploit and then verbally abuse clients who did not fit her profitable model. The narrator would underscore the profound betrayal Ms. Bartnoff felt, realizing that the promise of a free service was merely a facade for a scheme designed to extract money from men, with women serving as mere bait. This aggressive confrontation serves as a turning point in the case, solidifying the judge's perception of Linda's fraudulent operation. As the testimony unfolded, Judge Judy, with her characteristic sharp intellect and unwavering commitment to justice, began to dissect Linda's business model, focusing intently on the mandatory photography fee. The narrator would describe the judge's demeanor as increasingly critical, her questions piercing through Linda's carefully constructed defenses. Judge Judy challenged the very premise of a free service that necessitated a compulsory payment for photographs, seeing it not as an administrative cost, but as a direct revenue stream. She pointed out the inherent contradiction. If the service was truly free for women, why was there a non-negotiable charge for pictures, especially when Ms. Bartnoff was denied the option to provide her own? The judge's line of questioning suggested that this photography business was merely a front, a clever mechanism to extract money from women under the guise of offering a complimentary matchmaking service. The narrator would highlight Judge Judy's ability to cut through the rhetoric, exposing the underlying financial motive behind Linda's operations. The judge's skepticism was palpable as she probed Linda about the necessity of using a specific photographer and the inability for clients to bring their own images. This line of inquiry was designed to reveal whether the photography fee was genuinely for quality control and accurate representation. As Linda claimed, or simply a means to generate income. The narrator would emphasize the judge's growing conviction that Linda was operating a scam, using the photography requirement as a deceptive tool to profit from unsuspecting women. The judge's tone would shift from inquiry to accusation, making it clear that she saw through Linda's elaborate explanations. This segment of the video is crucial as it showcases Judge Judy's legal acumen and her dedication to uncovering the truth, ultimately leading to the conclusion that the photography fee was not a legitimate part of a free service, but rather a central component of a fraudulent scheme. The narrator would underscore the tension in the courtroom as Linda struggled to defend her practices against the judge's relentless questioning, revealing the fragility of her deceptive business model. Under the relentless questioning of Judge Judy, the defendant, Linda, found herself cornered, eventually admitting to a crucial detail that further exposed the deceptive nature of her business. The narrator would describe this moment as a significant turning point in the trial, where a sliver of truth finally emerged from Linda's evasive answers. Judge Judy, with her characteristic directness, pressed Linda on the financial mechanics of the mandatory photography fee. She asked how much of the $165 fee actually ended in Linda's pocket. Initially, Linda attempted to downplay the amount, stating it was very little. However, Judge Judy quickly countered, pointing out that very little ain't nothing, implying that the amount nominator household constituted a kickback if it was not disclosed to the clients. The narrator would highlight the judge's persistence and her ability to extract this vitalatability. Linda then confessed that she indeed received a kickback from the photographer for each woman who paid. $165 fee actually ended up in Linda's pocket. Initially, Linda attempted to downplay the amount, stating it was very little. However, Judge Judy, ever astute, quickly countered, pointing out that very little ain't nothing, implying that any amount, no matter how small, constituted a kickback if it was not disclosed to the clients. The narrator would highlight the judge's persistence and her ability to extract this vital admission. Linda then confessed that she indeed received a kickback from the photographer for each woman who paid the $165 fee actually ended in Linda's pocket. Initially, Linda attempted to downplay the amount, stating it was very little. However, Judge Judy, ever astute, quickly countered, pointing out that very little ain't nothing, implying that the amount nominator household constituted a kickback if it was not disclosed to the clients. The narrator would highlight the judge's persistence and her ability to extract this vitalatability. Linda then confessed that she indeed received a kickback from the photographer for each woman who paid $165 fee. This admission was damning, as it confirmed the judge's suspicion that the photography fee was not merely a cost recovery mechanism, but a profit-generating scheme. The narrator would emphasize the significance of this confession, as it directly contradicted Linda's earlier claims of a purely free service for women. Furthermore, Linda admitted that she did not disclose this kickback arrangement to her clients, a clear breach of transparency and ethical business practices. The judge's reaction would be one of confirmation, her earlier suspicions now validated by Linda's own words. The narrator would underscore the irony of Linda's attempt to minimize the kickback, as even a small amount, when multiplied by potentially hundreds of clients, would amount to a substantial sum. This revelation solidified the judge's view that the photography fee was a deceptive tactic, designed to funnel money into Linda's pockets under false pretenses. The kickback confession served as a powerful piece of evidence, demonstrating Linda's intent to profit from a service she advertised as free, thereby cementing the case against her and paving the way for the judge's final ruling. The narrator would conclude this point by emphasizing the judge's unwavering pursuit of truth and her ability to expose the hidden financial arrangements that underpinned Linda's alleged scam. The culmination of the trial arrived with Judge Judy's decisive verdict, a moment the narrator would describe with a sense of righteous closure. Having meticulously listened to Ms. Bartnoff's testimony, dissected Linda's evasive explanations, and extracted the crucial confession about the photography kickback, Judge Judy delivered her ruling with characteristic clarity and force. The judge unequivocally found in favor of Ms. Bartnoff, ordering Linda to reimburse the plaintiff the full $165 she had paid for the photographs. The narrator would emphasize the judge's firm tone and the finality of her decision, leaving no room for doubt about the court's stance on Linda's business practices. Judge Judy's conclusion was stark and unambiguous. The service, despite its claims of being free for women, was indeed a scam. She articulated that the mandatory photography fee, coupled with the undisclosed kickback Linda received from the photographer, constituted a deceptive scheme designed to extract money under false pretenses. The narrator would highlight Judge Judy's reasoning, explaining how the judge saw through the facade of a legitimate matchmaking service to expose the underlying financial exploitation. The judge's ruling served as a powerful condemnation of businesses that prey on individuals' hopes and aspirations, particularly when they involve misleading advertising and hidden costs. The narrator would also point out the broader implications of the verdict, suggesting that it sends a clear message to other similar operations that such deceptive practices will not be tolerated. The scene would conclude with the gavel banging, a symbolic gesture of justice being served, and the parties being excused from the courtroom. Ms. Bartnoff, though perhaps still reeling from the emotional ordeal, would likely feel a sense of vindication, knowing that her experience had been acknowledged and validated by the court. The narrator would underscore the importance of this outcome, not just for Ms. Bartnoff, but as a precedent for consumer protection against predatory business models. This final point in the narrative brings the story to a satisfying close, reinforcing the theme of accountability and the triumph of truth in the face of deception.